All right. Welcome back to Cactus Crossfire. I'm one of your co-hosts, Eddie Ableser.
And I'm Sisto Abeyta, and we're coming to you live from the Windy City, Eddie. I mean, we're hanging out here in beautiful Southside Chicago. It's been an eventful week. We've been here for the last 4 days in Chicago for the NCSL Summit.
That's National Conference of State Legislatures.
National Conference of State Legislatures. We've been talking to a lot of the legislators that we know from our respective states. We got you guys some great interviews with folks from Arizona, New Mexico,
Nevada.
NCSL, for those of you guys who don't know, is the National Conference of State Legislators. We talked about it in some of our wrap-up early on about what they do here. And what they do here is they discuss public policy that they'd like to see in their respective states. They talk about issues affecting the nation, and they get a lot of feedback, and it's an opportunity for not just legislators to have that interaction, but also, Eddie, me as a former legislative staffer, legislative staff is here. And they actually recognized from our home state, in my home state of New Mexico, Kelly Clunt, who was named as one of their top legislative policy people in the country. She was recognized just yesterday for all the work that she's done in New Mexico. And she's actually one of the original drafters of the universal child care bill that we're talking about all the time in New Mexico and across the country.
And it's just pretty amazing. We talk about universal child care, walking through the halls, run into this amazing individual from a company called Wonder School. They're working on ways to provide more access to child care in New Mexico. It's like, oh my gosh, the early childhood education, early childhood or universal child care program is amazing. The STEP program that they had in Michigan that he talked about. And I mean, you get these policy interactions that happen organically across every hall, across every session that you go to. You'll learn about a variety of things. Of course, data centers are a really hot topic, but beyond that, it's also relational, because I went out and I was working with the Utah delegation last night, hanging out with a bunch of great folks. My minority leader in the Utah House of Representatives, Angela Romero, and we're just having this great talk. She's like, oh, well, guess what? My cousin is Representative.
State Senator.
Sorry, Leo.
Senator Leo Jaramillo. So Senator Jaramillo, we're tied with your primo.
Yeah. So we're trying to create some good New Mexico, Utah coalition building, think tank possibilities. It's awesome.
And those interactions for us, Eddie, have all been about the fact that this is why we do the show. We do Cactus Crossfire for this reason, is the interconnectability throughout the entire Southwest. And just with this example that we're laying out for you guys right now, that just shows you how much of not just policy, but also familial relationships happen throughout the entire Southwest. So it's really exciting to see those types of things happening.
So one of the things that happens at NCSL is they have what's called the exhibit hall or vendor hall. Mm-hmm. And this is where businesses, think tanks, software providers, vendors that are trying to sell stuff, they all pay for a spot. This vendor hall, you walk up and down. Everyone's enticing you with a free pen or paperclip holder or band-aids. I'm like, honestly, stickers, these companies, like massive criticism to these companies and their marketing techniques. They are extremely archaic and way behind the times, and I cannot believe that they think, oh, I'm going to come take a looking at a Post-it note and learn more about, rural pediatric dentistry associations or what have you. So, but that's the interesting thing, Cecil, that struck me, and I'm interested in your thoughts. There were half of the vendors or half of the different booths there were policy idea booths, like ways on voting, rights to voting, different underrepresented populations.
The primaries.
Primaries. And there's just so many different unique aspects that they were promoting.
And in each of those organizations, and we even talked with a couple of people from Pew Foundation and other think tanks that are here trying to talk to legislators about initiatives that they're trying to push nationally. But these exhibit halls have really expanded their mission of not just doing, these are great products to help you in your states, but now they're really pushing a lot more policy initiatives, which was really interesting to see. So it was just like a huge a convention hall that was a lot about policy. And so engaging with some of those folks, American Lung Association was there, Open Primaries was there, and a number of other groups, and talking about successes and failures in various different states throughout the country. So it was kind of interesting.
You brought up Pew Foundation. I mean, I didn't know much about Pew Foundation, and we had some great interactions. I think it was Brian. Holler back to Brian. I think he's in D.C. Morgan. Wouldn't forget Utopia. What a great name. But we met these wonderful individuals. They're working in this energy space. I'm like, well, so talk to me about energy space. They're like, well, listen, the American public gets so energized. I mean, everything is political. We talk about this. Your algorithm tells you, oh, we have to hate data centers, but yet you're on your phone and you're using AI to understand the things about data centers, and you don't even realize that you can't even do that if you hate data centers. And that's where Pew comes in. They're like trying to create this rational approach to policy and say what you dislike about a policy can be resolved with more engaged conversation, discourse, and thoughtful design of public policy. And those individuals, it was great meeting all of them and talking to them about what they're working on.
And it was just amazing, the cross section of their staffs. There was a couple of people from Pew that actually were in, before they actually joined Pew, they were working at the municipal level and working on municipal projects for new energy and economies throughout the entire West. So it was interesting to hear their conversations. It was interesting to engage with them, but more interesting than anything else was the fact that a lot of these policy ideas that you're going to be seeing coming out of your local legislatures over the next couple of years probably had some impact or growth out of these conferences like NCSL.
Yeah, and that's where it starts, right?
Yeah.
These think tanks, and we joked in other episodes. This is summer school, or not even summer camp. But it is actually more summer school. Yeah, honestly. Yeah. People are out here working hard, and for sure, you're exploring Chicago. It's a beautiful town. When we arrived, it was 90 degrees and 90% humidity. I walked into Chicago and said, I never want to come back. Thankfully, we had a huge storm, tornado warnings everywhere. Those that are local to Chicago will understand that. And then we've had 2 amazing days of 80 degrees, no humidity, beautiful weather, just beautiful city, walking by the Sears Tower, the River Walk, by the Bean, up by Lake Michigan. It was incredible. And, we've had a very, very great time in Chicago, enjoying all the people and this amazing atmosphere. The one thing I didn't do, Sisto, I did not have Chicago pizza. So,
you and I had this brief conversation yesterday about Chicago pizza. It must be a desert thing, because those of you who know Chicago pizza, it's kind of thick, it's kind of big, it's a little bit. It's more lasagna than pizza in my mind. So a lot of the time, but and that's the other thing about these about NCSL. The great thing is that all of you guys know that me and Eddie have known each other since Young Democrat days. It was very interesting to see some of our former Young Democrat friends that were actually still involved in public policy across their various states. Ran into a very old good friend of mine from here in Chicago. He was actually meeting with another person from New Mexico, and we just ran into each other and reconnected. And so you build those relationships as well with folks over the years that you may not think will span a lifetime, but they really do in this space. So it was pretty cool.
It is cool. Well, Sisto, outside of the work that we do in public policy, and then on to Cactus Crossfire, talking about the, late breaking issues, the things that everyone in the country is talking about, trying to provide a better analysis on, what does the press say? What is CNN coming out, New York Times with their, very specific agenda? What's Fox News and Newsmax coming out with their very specific agenda, and sort of what's in the middle, right? Like what is really happening? And, one of the big things that everyone's talking about in Michigan, and it's really, really interesting, is this Michigan Senate primary. You have, Peters, Representative Peters, that is going to the daughter of Gary, going to run and possibly take that seat against this DSA candidate who, came out of, was really not thought of as a front runner or a contender, El Said, and they're tied in the polls. It's going to be neck and neck. Now, those of you that are not familiar with Michigan has one of the largest Islamic populations in the country, all around that Dearborn area. And so, obviously, a candidate like El Said, who is running for this spot in the Democratic primary, is getting a lot of momentum. So that's interesting because another DSA conversation that you and I continually talk about, El Said continues to criticize Stevens for her support and for Jews across the country. He, meanwhile, is getting millions of dollars from these foreign PACs from the Middle East, which I think has caused a lot of concern. And then you look at the polls in the general election, and their opponent, who they're running against, Roberts, is destroying El Said by 10 points. But Stevens has a little bit of a bump on him. What do you think about the dynamics in Michigan?
Michigan is going to be always a battleground, no matter what cycle we're in. It's always one of the top states that we're talking about in presidential years as to which way Michigan is going to swing. In this space right now, it has become hypersensitized because of the money. And usually that's what it is. It's always all about the money and where the money's coming from and who's funding these campaigns. So, we like to say here on Cactus Crossfire all the time, follow the cash, and you'll know where these folks are coming from. But the interesting narrative is surrounding the deep divisions, not just within the Democratic Party, but also within the Republican Party, of whether you're a MAGA Republican or you're a traditionalist Republican. And a lot of those conversations did happen here at NCSL. And we're going to continue to watch that right here on Cactus Crossfire. We're going to be giving you guys the latest and the greatest and all that stuff as it comes into our spaces. But, these two candidates right now, they really have to start focusing in on what was the thing that we were talking about with a lot of our legislators? Affordability. Well, what does that mean? What does affordability mean? Does that mean just driving down gas prices? Does that mean creating better opportunities for people to become homeowners? Does it mean rent controls across the entire country? All of those things, the devil is always in the detail, folks. So when you start hearing a lot of this rhetoric in those spaces, you can start asking the questions that we hope that we are educating you on right here on Cactus Crossfire, which is, what does that mean? What does affordability mean for different folks in different places and regions of the country?
Well, it's interesting you say that because back to the Michigan Senate primary, right? You had a debate that recently happened, and anyone that is paying attention, that localized dynamic, they're jabbing, they're going back and forth, and honestly, it is this rush to the left. How far off the cliff to the left can you lean without falling over? And it turned into this perpetual debate with El Said just really promoting true democratic socialism, communism policies that frankly we know have been failed across the world in all history. However, he continues to promote it. Now, Haley, right? Great Haley Stevens, she's coming forward and she's supporting reasonable, rational economic policies, social investment policies. But guess what also is happening? And I know you want to jab at me around my juxtaposition on the Democratic Socialist Communists of the Democratic Party. However, Trump is coming out talking about affordability with Roberts. And I think that's something that everyone needs to realize. The Republicans are entering the vacuum that's happening in Michigan when they're fighting around really non-issues.
Well, I mean, but when the Republicans have to move into that space to win these elections. These elections are so close, and people are feeling the pinch so much that it's behoove of the Republicans to start talking about the economy. It's because they've actually always won on it. And right now they're failing at it. They're failing at the economy. They're failing with failed policies. They haven't found a way to help the working class in a meaningful way. and and the working class is starting to feel the crunch. Now, what are we talking about? And to paraphrase one of the greatest political philosophers of all time, Allen Iverson, we're talking about primaries, right? Not just practice, and that's what primaries are. They're practice
Wrong
for,
city.
they're practices. They're practices for what the upcoming narrative in the general elections are going to be. And it's about motivating their bases. It's about getting them fired up. It's about helping them to turn out vote in the general. And that's what you're going to hear a lot of right now. But don't be surprised when you start hearing some of these VSA candidates start shifting closer to the middle, because quite frankly, what I've seen over the years with a lot of progressive candidates, they always shift back to the middle after the primary. So they're trying to just energize their bases. And remember, in most primaries, hear me out, people, in most primaries, only 20% of the entire electorate show up. So if you want to have a broader voice in some of these elections, you got to get out and vote, especially in these open primary states.
Well, speaking of primaries or upcoming elections, let's jump over to Kentucky, because I think there's some interesting things happening in Kentucky. We haven't talked much about former Senate President Mitch McConnell, or I guess Senate Majority Leader, not President, President's Vice President.
Yeah.
But Mitch McConnell served his country, served the Senate, served his state in one of the most high-profile positions in this country for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
He got sick, went to the hospital, and now the governor and potential Democratic presidential candidate Andy Beshear is calling for what, Sisto? What's Andy talking about? And I like Andy. He's actually a really nice guy.
You know, Governor Beshear has thrown the gauntlet down, and he's saying, "I need proof of life."
Oh,
I mean,
back to the certificates.
you know,
Come on.
and it's not a birth certificate; it might be a death certificate.
Oh,
we don't know.
man.
But he's asking for proof of life, and he's asking that for the senator to come out on camera and show that he is capable, that he is still coherent, to give him a timeline for when he's going to go back to work for the people of Kentucky and Washington, D.C. And those are all questions that I think are valid in this case, because we have seen over the years, and unfortunately, in today's age of technology, we actually have seen the slowly progression of what seems to be a health issue for Senator McConnell. It's unfortunate that sometimes these folks have a hard time letting go. It was kind of interesting. We were talking with legislators yesterday about legislators who have left the body and either come back or they stay away, and how that transition happens for them. It's an interesting thing with that, folks. I mean, I've been around elected officials for a very long time, and it's very hard for them to just say, "It's my time to go." And but if you do not have staff around you, if you do not have people around you who are willing to level with you and be straight with you and say, "It's your time, you can't do this anymore," these are the types of situations that you're going to subject yourself to in today's society, where people are going to start questioning whether you're still able to serve.
Well, and let's be honest, that's how we have Trump part two.
Yeah.
Because you had Joe Biden, who clearly had declined in health, declined significantly in cognitive function. And there's stories coming out now where, Joe Biden talked about how she thought her husband had a stroke on the stage. I mean, just all sorts of like horrifying things, thinking about what are we doing to these beloved, historic statespeople that we continue to perpetuate, prop them up for a long period of time. And honestly, you and I both know how it is. We blame staff because staff is covering their own behinds. Staff are looking out for themselves. What staff is doing is like, hey, if my guy goes, my job goes, right? If I have to go get another job in someone else's office, now I'm on the lower part of the totem pole and I don't have that ability. And so staff is always the ones that try to maintain that figurehead to perpetuate their stance at the detriment of that individual.
And the saddest part with that is that there's loyalty from staff to their elected that they're working for. But I learned this a very long time ago, and I have a former legislator that I work for, and I call it a certain type of legislator effect, where they've been there too long and they just get burnt out. And I saw that individual get burnt out and then eventually lose their election, and then you're out because they've lost. But what I learned from that experience is that once you start seeing those patterns and once you start seeing those things start happening, because it happens to them, it does happen to them. It's a very stressful job being an elected official. But I took it upon myself to be that voice of reason and say, you know what? You're done. Your time is done. We can't keep you propping you up like this. It's time to go. You need to resign. You need to not run for reelection and enjoy the rest of your life. Because what ends up happening in this world, folks, is a lot of people, they come into this space and it's very intoxicating because you're constantly being referred to not by your name anymore, but by the title which you hold. So you're constantly calling somebody an assemblywoman or a representative or senator, whichever dynamic you have in your respective states, or councilwoman or commissioner or judge, and that creates an air of invincibility. And when you're talking about seniority, when you're talking about learned, when you're talking about those types of things, that's what leads us to this Mitch McConnell situation where sometimes it's just hard to let go.
And that's such a good point. I remember a political commentator many years ago talked about, and when I served, it's something that I thought about quite a bit because I went from punk, idiot, stupid, young, right.
So not much has changed. That's what you're saying.
Not much has changed, but I went from those adjectives to all of a sudden, senator, honorable, honorable. What are you talking about? But like that, those adjectives quickly and those titles quickly turned over, and it creates this this artificial, fake sense of esteem and quasi status that really what this political commentator talking about is we as humans, we occupy that space like water in a cup.
Yeah.
Really what only people care about is that cup, and that cup changes. Water and different fluid liquids go into it at random times. No one really cares about the liquid. No one cares about what's in the cup. They care about the cup itself, because the moment you, Mitch McConnell, leave as Senate Majority Leader, now it's Majority Leader Thune. Mm-hmm. And that's where the focus on that title. And Senator McConnell has that title. The moment he leaves, it has passed you by. And that's what we forget oftentimes when people vilify a group of individuals. In their heart, most people are good people. Most people care. Most people try hard and care about other people. And when you meet those individuals, despite your differences on policy, you want to support someone like that.
So when that transition happens, when you start seeing folks like that just want to do the right thing and want to serve, I don't think a lot of times that in the discourse that we talk about, genuinely folks are not the evil person that they think they are. It's just they have a difference of opinion on how we get to the same place. Mm-hmm. So we've talked about it for so many times about you and I have never met a politician that wasn't pro-education.
Oh. The whole of education.
The whole of education. Yeah. But it's how we do it. And the devil's in that detail. So, I mean, we have to be mindful of that. We have to remember that sometimes, being a good Catholic as I am, sometimes, we used to lift our parish priests up very high, and we had to learn very hard way that they're also they have mistakes, and they're just human like everybody else.
We're going to transition, and Sisto and I got together and talk a little bit about what's going on in the U.S. Senate today and this week. Dr. Fauci is coming in front of the Senate to answer questions about COVID, about apparently his diary that got released. Did not read a lot of that.
Yeah,
but I read some clips. Interesting commentary by Dr. Fauci. What do you think? I mean, is this just another dog and pony show? Nothing's really going to come out of it.
It's interesting because when you start looking into people's personal thoughts and ideas about certain things, and especially in the context of a diary, you're probably going to read things that people are just putting down on paper because it's what they're feeling at the time. Mm. I don't know, Eddie, you might have a little more insight into how people use a diary to work out whatever issues they may be having at the time. But we got to remember Dr. Fauci during the COVID situation, he was under a lot of stress about managing that entire pandemic that we had, and probably said some things in his diary that I'm sure that looking back on it now, he's probably not too proud of what he wrote in that thing. But it's one of the reasons why you and I always advise elected officials and other policymakers do not have a diary.
Yeah.
Do not record those types of personal thoughts, simply because you never know how it will be reproduced or put in the context for whoever may be reading it or watching it.
Yeah, the only thing I think about when I think of diaries is TV show The Office. Michael Scott had this diary where he talked about this, amazingly beautiful, handsome person, someone named Ryan. And anyway, it was a funny example of diary. People that have diaries, so forgive me. I mean, listen, we're not all the same. I've never written a diary once in my life. Never. That's just not who I am. That have no interest. People use it to process, and I think there's a good psychological benefit to get those things out. And honestly, if that's what Dr. Fauci could have just said, hey, I was under a team pressure. Everyone was looking to me to be the savior of the world because everyone thought the end is near, right? This pandemic was going to kill everyone off. And I mean, it did. It killed a lot of people. So he's freaking out. He has a lot of pressure on him. He wrote down some of his thoughts. Interesting, some of the thoughts we've read, but nothing, life changing at this point.
But I think that's part of the problem. People have, there was a lot of different opinions of how state by state the pandemic was handled, the advice he was giving to the president, how long we stayed closed, how long we should keep our kids out of rooms and all those things.
Social distancing, which we're not doing right now.
But all of that stuff, and it really did change the face of the entire country. And he had a lot of influence in that moment. But I think, those are the types of contracts we make with our government, is that we're going to get these elected officials and these public officials who are going to make the best decisions for all of us, even though it doesn't always, or at least a small majority of us. But at the same time, I can understand why, he's been pleading the fifth. And part of that is because, one, Congress can use any of that information any way they want, spin it any way they want. It's has subpoena power, but it is not a judicial body that has a deliberative component to it, where the evidence is presented, they deliberate on it, and then there's a ruling made based on the evidence. The evidence that's presented in these cases, what typically happens is that you, the public, and the elected officials get to change, to say what the outcome is and create their own narratives around it. So, and I think that Dr. Fauci is probably doing the right thing right now, especially because it is a personal diary that, Dr. Fauci really should be pleading the fifth. And unfortunately for Fauci, if he was in a court of law, he would have an attorney sitting with him at the table helping him answer the questions, right? In this case,
Senator Paul
kicked him out and said, you can't be there. You were advised to sit in the back row. Well, I don't know if any of you guys have ever been in one of these congressional hearing rooms, but that back row is very far away from the dais where the people are testifying sit. And, and that's, and I think that everybody has, under our Constitution, has a right to representation. Also under our Constitution, has the right to not answer questions under the Fifth Amendment, so that they're not perjuring themselves. And I think that Dr. Fauci probably did the right thing.
Yeah. Well, it's easy for all of us to play Monday morning quarterback. I mean, our favorite teams, I know you're a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan, but you can look back the next day and be like, Baker just would have hit the wide open, slant route.
We don't do that anymore because the season, we're not going to steal out of the Baker Mayfield. I'm not sure, but you're right. It is that Monday morning quarterback. It is, we like to call it in politics the Wednesday armchair quarterback, because elections happen on Tuesday. So, but at the same time, folks have to be, there has become this thing in American politics where it's a constant attempt to get you in a gotcha.
Everything's a gotcha.
And everything's a gotcha.
I mean, and honestly, when we were approaching some of our friends at NCSL and being like, hey, jump on Cactus Crossfire, Right, so like, what is going on? Are you going to get me? And that's not how we do it, right? Like I used to be in those positions. It is about learning about people. It's about connecting. It's about understanding really the heart behind, the actions and principles of what people are trying to accomplish. And so that's what we're doing here. But with COVID, I mean, it was a terrifying time. I have many friends who lost their loved ones, lost their parents. It's not something to be taken lightly at all. We can also go back and analyze and learn and say, okay, next, if there is another pandemic that happens, what do we do? How do we prepare for it?
Yeah.
How do we not, go to a point where people are injecting some random chemical in their body?
During COVID, we did not make the best decisions. But what we did do right is something that has those long-lasting effects of lessons learned. We had not had anything like that since the Spanish flu. And that was in the early 1900s. So, that's something that we have to think about is that we haven't seen a virus like COVID. To the country's credit, they actually found a vaccine. We tested it fairly quickly. We got it out into the public as fast as we could.
All right. Well, on the Spanish flu and Spain, who had just won the World Cup, and a lot of my friends said it was really exciting. They loved the World Cup. I thought it was boring, to be honest. It was 0-1. 0-1. And it was just a lot of pass back and forth. Oh, fall on the ground. Let's fall on the ground and cry. And but to that point, tell me something, and I could start off if you don't have yours, but I want to know something spicy, prickly, and quickly.
So spicy, the spicy thing is that what I have learned is there is very little spice in Chicago. Being a New Mexican, we love our green chili
and red
and our red chili. There has been a very hard time for me while I am here. I forgot to bring my little thing of green chili with me. Had a breakfast burrito yesterday morning, and it was not the same. So that's my spicy take. My prickly take is that when we're talking about public policy and when we're talking about elected officials, the one thing that I wish people did more of was recognize the other people behind the scenes, legislative staffers, all those folks that work in our New Mexico legislature and our state legislatures throughout the country. They're the unsung heroes. They work long hours. They work very hard to try to get us the best policies and work for the members as best they can. And so here, I think that we need to do a better job of uplifting them and recognizing them because they do a tremendous job for all of us. So that's my prickly take. And quickly, at the end of the day, my one big quickly thing, and it's a little bit of a prickly take as well. We didn't get to go to see the Michael Jordan statue while we were here.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's the only thing we didn't get to do.
I did see Walt Payton's statue.
Yeah.
I was there last night. I was never a Michael Jordan fan.
Yeah.
Let me be honest. But so my spicy take. I go to all these different cities. Here's the thing. I don't understand how anyone lives in high humidity areas. I mean, people
we're desert people.
You have the ability to move. Yeah. You don't have to live in the city. In this city, it's beautiful today, but unbelievable. I mean, we got here drenched within minutes of just sweat and humidity. And then there was the tornadoes and the floods. And I mean, we've heard about this in the desert. That's different, not tornadoes, but the humidity is unbelievable in the Midwest.
Yeah.
And spicy for me, heck no, I would never do that. That's crazy. You guys are crazy. My prickly take. All right. Prickly take was all in for this, this World Cup. I was cheering for U.S. men's national team. And I said it before, I'm going to say it again. The world of professional soccer has to fix their fall down on the floor and cry like a baby part of their sport. It is pathetic. I have lost all respect for soccer players. It's ridiculous. They fall on the ground. I don't care if they think they're athletes. It is, it's they just over dramatize things.
Mm-hmm.
It is it is awful to watch and it's horrible to watch. And I think NBA needs to do something to make sure they don't go that direction either, because there's a lot of flopping there. But that's my spicy take. And finally, quickly, I cannot wait. Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu is going to New York City to basically look at Mayor Two-Face, Mayor Communist Memdani, this total joke of a person, and say, come at me, bro, right? Come at me. What are you going to do? Because he can't do anything. Mayor Memdani is full of crap. Everyone knows it. And so as a result, we're going to see something play out, international politics on the stage of New York City, which I'll be honest, I would come back to Chicago any day if it was a choice between Chicago and New York. New York is a very cruddy town, in my opinion.
Well,
all right.
Everybody, thanks for stopping in. Thanks for joining us on this travel. We'll be bringing more of these to you as time goes on. And as always, have a great day.
Like us, follow us, CACTUSCrossFIRE.com on Instagram, Facebook. Peace.